Happy Monday, everybody. Hope your week's starting out well. Excited to be back for this week's practice. Just as a reminder, down in the subscription, if you want to learn a little bit more about the details of this practice, check out the intro video. Also, rate and subscribe if you can. We really appreciate the feedback, and feel free to leave a comment or a question, and I'm happy to respond or engage as much as you're interested in hearing from me. Also, we're back on Monday. Last week was a little bit of an anomaly, but we're here. We're back in our normal recording space and ready to share this week's practice. So let's get right into it. We're continuing to work with freedom. We're going to explore freedom through the lens of responsibility and progression. What are we talking about? So let's say progression, simply, there are certain boundaries that don't allow us to be as free as we would like to. So for example, you can't drive until you're 15 or 16, depending on what state you live in. You can't vote until you're 18. You might not be able to drink, at least in some areas in the United States, until you're 21. This inhibits freedom at some level to do whatever I want when I want at certain ages. You might wonder, why is that necessary? To drive kind of makes sense. The way cars are structured, it's hard for a baby or a small child to even manage the mechanics of a car. That's more obvious. But let's talk about voting. Why can't a 5-year-old engage in a vote? What has shifted and changed by the time you're 18 that we say, okay, you are ready now to take on the responsibility of voting? And that's how responsibility is directly connected to the concept that we're exploring. At what stages and levels does responsibility come in as directly related to freedom? So the more freedom I get, the more responsibility I might have to manage that freedom. And we're going to talk a little bit about, the health of freedom and the balancing act of those two things. And it's really important because at Meristem, our lens, our end is healthy social life. And it's an unhealthy social life if I say, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want and however I want to do it, irregardless of how it affects others. Whatever I do, ultimately, out of my own free choices or the freedoms that I have, will affect others. And if I just say, irregardless of someone else, I'm going to do whatever I want and it affects them, well, yeah, I've exercised my ability to be free, but I've also created unhealth in that the way in which I'm being responsible with my freedom has swung to one side. And let's say maybe I never want to engage. I never want to make a choice for myself. And that spectrum swings to the other side where I just let the world dictate to me how I go about my life. Neither one of those are healthy in it from a social perspective. And so it's really important for you to look at progression and responsibility in relationship to freedom. So the practice is going to be research, and this week we're going to get a little bit more personal. Look at your own experiences of freedom around responsibility and progression as you were growing up. So, this is coming and really asking yourself a little bit, did I have tighter boundaries or looser boundaries as a child, as a teen, as I went off to college? Did my parents provide, a gradually evolving freedom of opportunity, or did it stay tight? As a result of it staying tight, did I rebel? What environment did you grow up in? A city environment has its own kind of challenges and opportunities to navigate, but it's also, a different type of constraint that versus if you grew up out in nature or in a very rural area where there's large tracts of land where you can wander and never be inhibited by a building or a car. Very different. And then as you grow up and you switch and go into another environment, how did that experience inform you? How did you then adjust and kind of try to move more towards a state of balance rather than one extreme or another? So do the research, do a little work on this, and look at yourself now and how that kind of informed how you're acting today. The value for this week is I show up. dignity. How does freedom relate to showing up? Do you and the people around you feel more or less inhibited based on how you are showing up? So am I when I come into a room, or when I engage with somebody else, am I doing it in a way that shuts them down, that with the way I'm carrying myself attempts to inhibit their freedom? Or am I doing it in a way that allows them to step into the conversation freely? For example, am I acknowledging in the way in which I approach the conversation that you are an equal partner in this dialogue, and vice versa? Are they responding to me in a way that says the same, where we can both bring our full selves to the situation, or not, based on how we're showing up? So explore me showing up. Like, for example, I might show up and I'm tired and I'm pissed and it's been a long day, and immediately that comes through in my voice, that comes through in my tone, that comes through in my body language, and that might say to another person immediately, oh, I better not engage with Aaron, or I shouldn't talk to him, or it triggers me and now I'm pissed at Aaron. And so we really want to pay attention to that, because the deeper conversation with freedom is, when I'm pissed, I'm not actually acting out of my own freedom. Anger is driving me at that point, rather than a digested consciousness that sees and reads the terrain and responds clearly to it. So this is our week: concept, practice, value, looking at responsibility, progression, exploring your own biography, and how you show up in and around the social environment. And so just wrapping up with the infographic here, the progression, freedom comes in a progression, and my ability to access my full freedom takes time as I grow and evolve. And you can kind of see through the stepping stones from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. Safety adherence early on. I mean, this is what parents hold. And so how I hold that as a parent may or may not maximize a child's ability to exercise their freedom. Not a knock either way, but it's important to be aware of that so that we can make the adjustments as we grow. Accountability and boundaries, collective responsibility. All these are pieces that we want to explore and reflect on for ourselves. And going through your life, journeying, kind of looking at, what were your early experiences? What was the environment? How were you parented? What professional experiences? What are your current patterns? How did that all play out in your formative years? What can you connect from your formative years to your current way of going about things? And lastly, we're looking at showing up, and the way in which I show up can actually create safety and comfort. And when I show up that way, I can actually allow somebody to come out of themselves, which is maybe their freest state to express and engage in conversation. So this is the work for the week. We're working on freedom, accountability, and what that feels like to you and how you go about it. So remember, little bites, do what you can, and let's go forward and awaken the possible.